I'm going to show you exactly how I got my client Scott here from 79 kilos to 70 kilos, absolutely shredded in just 15 weeks, all while working a busy 9 to 5, being a dad of 2, and having to manage a lot of travel for work and holidays. So the first thing that I do with all my clients when they get signed up is we jump on a consultation call, which allows me to collect all the information I need to set them out with a plan. Scott, 79 kilos. As you can see, he's in decent nick already. He's got a bit of a dad bod, but you can see he's got a good foundation of muscle. And that's because he was an intermediate lifter. And what I mean by that is he's been training pretty consistently on and off for the past few years, lifting weights. He's familiar with the gym environment. He also has been tracking his food. He eats relatively clean, sticking to some sort of diet Monday through till Friday, but then the weekends and travel sort of throws him off. So that's where as well I was collecting a lot of information. So firstly, dad of 2, very busy, high stress, minimum sleep, had lots of travel and a busy job. So he was actually an Olympic coach for British cycling. So he was traveling. He'd just been to Paris Olympics that summer, had lots of travel. He was traveling, I think over the 15 weeks, he went on 3 or 4 work trips where he was going to different countries, having to manage athletes. He wasn't able to lift during those periods, and we had to put plans in place to manage that. Also, he was originally from Ireland, had to go back and forth for family commitment. So one of the reasons why he'd struggled to sort of see results in the past was he couldn't manage his travel. He would make progress, when at home, but as soon as any social events would come up, he'd gain that weight back on, and he was never really seeing the results despite putting in a lot of effort. One of the biggest things was limited time. As you can see, he was very busy, but he also wanted to spend as much time as possible with his kids. So he didn't have hours to spend in the gym. We had to put a plan out that he would be able to consistently stick to and commit to, despite having lots of other commitments in his life. So that was the number one thing that he stressed was important to him, that he wanted to be able to have a plan where he could still manage all these other things in his life. And that's where the coaching aspect comes in. There is no cookie cutter plan. Every single client is totally different. You have to take a holistic approach with every single client, and that's why these consultation calls are so important. So I can straight away understand the obstacles that this individual, in Scott's case, was going to face when it comes to getting a physique transformation. This transformation today is a brilliant example that there's no excuse as to why you can't get a transformation. The only reason why you can't is because you're not making it a priority. And that is exactly why Scott reached out. He realized that he could do it, he just wasn't making it a priority. He was busy as hell. He just needed someone to keep him accountable and put a structured plan in place that he could stick to and take him through the journey of going from dad bod to shreds. And that's exactly what we did. So I'm going to break his transformation down into 3 phases. Firstly, weeks 1 to 5. Now, during this time, we pulled off a nice bit of body fat, went from 79 kilos to 75 kilos. Initially with transformations, that first phase, body weight comes off pretty quick. You go from being in a calorie surplus to putting you in a calorie deficit, following a structured regime, and body weight tends to come off pretty quick, around about 1 to 1.5% a week. We set a baseline. Firstly, like I said before, very busy individual. So we just stuck to 3 full body workouts lasting 60 minutes doing antagonistic supersets. So what that means is he'd go from a chest press to maybe a row. So working opposite muscle groups like the chest and back together. Now the only reason we did that was to purely save time. I wanted to get the most of that 1 hour that we had in the gym. So the first port of call as well with his training was improving it, making sure he was sending me training clips to improve his form, his range of motion, and his tempo, making sure he was controlling the weight. Once we nailed those variables, it does take a few weeks to get your training right. So it took probably by the end of week 5, we'd absolutely nailed that. And then we looked to really push progressive overload. But initially, it's just training through full range of motion, using good tempo, and lifting with good form. Once we've nailed that, we can then really look to push on. And I know if we start doing that, we're growing muscle. So initially his training wasn't that good in terms of half reps, a little bit of ego lifting. We pulled it back, provided a bit of stimulus to the muscle, and that's how we go through a crazy recomp phase where he's managed to lose fat and build muscle at the same time. With his diet, again, all about convenience for Scott. So he was literally eating 3 meals a day and a protein shake as a snack with a piece of fruit. Breakfast, we were just keeping it simple. He was just having an egg bagel, then he was having a meal prep for lunch, and then for dinner, he was eating whatever his partner and his family were cooking, but he was just weighing out his foods. So initially, we just set calorie targets for having 1,800 calories, making sure we were consuming around about 160 grams of protein, looking to get 2 grams per kilo of body weight. If he went a little bit under, it wasn't the end of the world. He was tracking his macros because, again, he's quite advanced. So all clients are different. Some clients, you've got meal plans, others macros. For Scott, we had a base meal plan of those 3 meals a day, but the dinner is where we would track the macros to make sure we ended up hitting our calorie target of 1800 calories and not going over it. Because at the end of the day, the most important thing is that we're in a calorie deficit. Now, again, one of the biggest things that I mentioned in the consult was managing travel. So I think within the first week, he was going to Bulgaria, and then he was going, I can't even remember, he was going to so many different places around Europe for his work. So we just put protocols in place. All we did was we made sure when he was away, he wasn't able to train. There was never really access to a gym. So he was doing cardio when he was away. He was also fasting. So what we were doing is we were skipping breakfast because he was busy out and about, and we were just pushing those calories later on towards the day. So again, he was tracking his food, but it was hard because he was going to restaurants for the evening. We weren't 100% sure. So we were just playing it safe. Output was high during the day with steps and cardio. And then we would go out, he'd send me a picture of the menu. We'd pick the best option. We'd go for high protein, low fat options, having steak, chicken wraps, things like that, where we were getting a good source of protein, so we're hitting our protein target as best as possible, but sticking within an 1800 calories. The goal when he was away was to minimize the damage. So when he was at home, at base, we were losing weight nicely, around 1% a week. When we were away for 4 or 5 days, the goal was, right, if you come back at the same weight, that is a big win. We didn't want that yo-yo effect that he was so used to having. Phase 1 was done. Now we're on to phase 2. Again, this goes from weeks 5 to 10. Here we went from 75 kilos to 72 kilos. So as you can see here, we haven't lost as much weight as that first phase, but visually we see a little bit of difference, a bigger difference, than the first phase. And the reason for that is body fat is coming down. Smaller changes in body weight lead to greater changes, exponential changes in how the physique looks. So this is why it's so important that we take physique pictures week on week. Now, during this time, he nailed his training. Form, tempo, execution was all spot on. So it was about maximizing that through using progressive overload, lifting more weights each week. We knew if we were doing that while pulling body weight down, if you're lifting more / the same weight at 72 kilos versus 79 kilos, we know we're not losing any muscle. So again here, it was about manipulating variables for fat loss. So during this period, we were slowly tapering down his carbohydrates and fats, so bringing down his calories, keeping protein round about the same, aiming for 2 grams per kilo of body weight. And then we were just adding in cardio. So perfect for Scott. He had a apartment gym, which had a Stairmaster, some cross trainers. So on rest days, we would just get him going down, doing that. So normally with clients, I don't really advise doing HIIT. I actually prefer doing lower intensity, steady state cardio. But for Scott, convenience time, he didn't have loads of time. Right, let's get down there. Let's do 15, 20 minutes, hard intensity on that Stairmaster to burn as many calories as we possibly could. Again, during this phase, lots of traveling came up. Right, we knew we can manage these variables now very well. We knew if you're away, if anything, he was still losing weight because he was so locked in and dialed in and had this again as a big priority. This is a priority and you want to get a transformation, you just control the amount of food you put in your mouth. It is that simple. So with him, it was about being consistent for these 5 weeks and we slowly saw weight. We just kept chipping away, chipping away. This is where it's just so important, finding a plan that you can stick to and enjoy. Then the only factor is time. The final phase, weeks 10 to 15. This is where, as you see here, we've gone from 72 kilos to 70 kilos. So it's actually the smallest amount of body weight he lost during the 3 phases, but it's the biggest change in terms of that final bit of body fat goes from looking, yeah, he looks good, to wow, this dad is shredded. You know what I mean? This is where it was the final push for shreds. Now, the biggest thing during this time was, again, managing these social events. All it takes is 2-3 days of being not in a good spot, eating a bit more food, and then bang, body weight can go up. And then before you know it, you're 5-6 weeks away from being shredded. So it was almost treating those days as refeeds. You know, again, a big thing during this phase is managing fatigue. This can be diet fatigue as well as physical fatigue. So during this time, we actually were reducing his training volume. So instead of doing, for example, 3 working sets for exercises, we were bringing it down to 2. Similar with his cardio, we're actually reducing the amount of cardio he was doing just because I didn't want him to burn out, because as soon as you reach burnout, all it takes is one binge and before you know it, you're going 3-4 kilos. I knew if we just stayed in a deficit for the total of that 15 weeks, for that last bit, we would be game, shredded, as you can see from the photos. So again, it was just to avoid that burnout. Most people struggle to stick to a plan for a sustained period of time. That's why they can't get a result. It's nothing with regards to whether they're losing fat or not. It's, right, can you stick to this for 15 weeks and adapt it over time to make sure we're in a deficit? And that's exactly what we did with Scott. So again, pushing for the final shreds, using social events as refeeds. You know, when he'd go out with his family for dinner, I'd said to him, mate, right, let's keep protein high in the day, just having like a protein shake with some fruit, maybe some eggs and chicken veg. But then when you go out, actually enjoy yourself and pick a nice meal. Like we talk about the menu, go and have a nice, you know, big bowl of chicken and rice or whatever. God, it sounds so boring, but whatever it may be, he'd go and enjoy themselves. Yes, the next day body weight might be up a little bit, but he'd then go into the gym and use that food as fuel. And yes, we might go up a bit, but then we'd go down and reach new lows. And every time we reached a new low, again with the physique pictures, he just looked better and better and better. And that's exactly how we ended it at 70 kilos, looking absolutely shredded for his photo shoot. The result, we look across the 15 weeks, he's gone all the way down from 79 kilos to 70 kilos. Lost a load of fat, but not only that, he's built a load of muscle. He's definitely gone through a recomp phase. Now, how do we know that? We didn't do any fancy scans, but if we look at his physique, we can see, right, he looks more built, looks like he's lost fat, but also training performance in the gym. That is a big thing, is improving training performance. I cannot emphasize the importance of sending training clips and improving that as soon as possible, because if we went through them 15 weeks and his training wasn't good, he wouldn't have looked nowhere near as good as what he did at the end, even if he had lost the same amount of weight. Now, again, a big thing is lifestyle habits. He did this while maintaining his social life, while going traveling, for work and family visits. So he knew that he was able to maintain this. It wasn't like he, had 15 weeks where he was just living in a cave eating chicken and rice every single day. He did this while maintaining all the relationships with his friends and family and at work. So that was the main win, because at the end of the day, he would never have achieved this result if we didn't make the plan suit his lifestyle. Don't make your lifestyle suit the plan. We're not bodybuilders. We're not gonna be perfect. We're gonna have social events, family events, things come up. We wanna make sure that our plan suits those things so we can still do them. And that's where most people go wrong. What lessons can you take away from this transformation? Because you're probably gonna have very many similarities that Scott did. You might be a dad. You might have a busy working professional life where you're working lots of hours, might be traveling a lot, and you might be using these as excuses as to why you can't get a result. But Scott's just shown you that you can do that. Now, what can you take away from this? Firstly, consistency is more important than perfection. Like I said, you are not a bodybuilder. We need to make this transformation work, you need to be able to consistently stick to a plan for a sustained period of time. Chasing perfection leads to burnout. We do not want burnout. What we want is we want to be able to slowly tap away losing fat while building muscle, finding something that we can stick to and enjoy. That is where patience comes into play. People are thinking this is going to happen overnight. No, Scott was fully aware that he'd spent the last 15, 20 years slowly putting on body fat. It wasn't going to come off straight away, right? Even to do that in 15 weeks is crazy, Think how long it's taken him to put that weight on. He's managed to change his life around and achieve a physique transformation in just 15 weeks. So it's about being patient and setting a timeline out. Most people go wrong. They design a diet thinking, will this make me lose weight? They should be thinking, can I stick to this for 3 to 6 months? Because if you can stick to something and you're in a slight deficit for 3 to 6 months, you will lose weight. But if you can't even stick to it, yes, you might pull off 2-3 kilos really quickly, but then you can't stick to it, so you'll gain it all back. So that's where I say chasing perfection is just gonna lead to burnout. Don't chase perfection, find something you can stick to, because results take time. That's where the whole idea of sustainability comes from: enjoyment and convenience. Find something that you can enjoy. So for Scott, again, he found a training plan that he could stick to. That was convenient because it was just 3 full body sessions. Same with the diet. He enjoyed an egg bagel, he enjoyed a meal prep during the day. A shake and fruit was convenient for him, and then he just have dinner with his family, weighing it out. So everything was convenient. It didn't require him to prep loads of food in advance, make fancy meals. For him, it was just convenience, eating on the go, shakes, food that he enjoyed, simple. And that is exactly what it's going to take for you to achieve a transformation. Finding foods you enjoy to eat, a training program you can stick to. Don't use time as an excuse. Most of the guys on my page are only training 3 sessions a week, 3 hours long. Yeah, and if you can't do loads of cardio, that's fine. You just might have to eat a little bit less. But there is someone out there who is able to achieve a physique transformation, and they're in exactly the same scenarios as you. I guarantee if you come to me, I will be able to find one of my clients who've got a transformation who is in a situation similar to yourself, if not worse, and they made it work. So that's where the reason they made it work was because the accountability. So they had that accountability with myself. I was keeping them in check. Every single day with WhatsApps, once a week with check-in, reminding them of the goal. That's where most people go wrong. They forget the end goal. They're thinking so short term, they're not thinking, trusting the process. And that's because as well, they've never been in the process. I've helped hundreds of guys get into crazy shape, just like Scott. I know the step-by-step processes that are needed to get into shape. And that's because I give my clients as well clarity. They knew, like Scott when he went traveling, he knew exactly what he should be eating, how many steps to do them days, what cardio to do. It's like he just got told what to do, so he had total clarity. If you know every single day, this is the diet I need to follow, this is the training I need to do, this is the steps, this is the cardio. I just need to follow that, and then the pressure's on me to get you a result. But if you're sitting watching this video and you're trying to get a transformation and you don't know how many steps you should be doing a day, you don't know what cardio you should be doing a day, you don't know what training you should be doing, what you should be eating, then you need to ask yourself, you're probably not going to, well, don't ask yourself, I'm telling you, you're not going to get a transformation because you just have no clarity on what you need to be doing. You can manage holidays, travels, and social events. There's no excuses. People that come to me saying, can't commit because I've got a couple of weddings coming up, got a couple of parties, or got a holiday in 2 months' time. Right, well, during them phases, we're just going to try and maintain. But if during 80% of the time you're locked in and we manage that 20% of the time away, like we did with Scott, you will get a result. So if you're a guy and you're trying to get a transformation just like Scott, you're a busy dad, busy worker, traveling a lot, I've just given you the blueprint that I used with Scott. Now you can go away and you can try and work it out yourself, or you can fast track it and work with myself if you are interested in doing that. Fill in the form in the bio, drop me a comment, drop me a message on Instagram, and we can have a chat to see how I can potentially help you get a transformation just like I did with Scott and just like I do with all the clients on my page.